listener production.
The creators of this podcast would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which it is recorded. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first storytellers of this land. We pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, as well as any Indigenous people who may be listening today.
The following episode of Tofop is rated MA for mature audiences. It may contain sexual references, time travel references, allegations of bin misconduct, and mild coarse language. Tofop advises that this episode is not suitable for anyone under the age of 15 or anyone who thinks a comedy conversation between two old mates sounds like a terrible idea for a show. Minors must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. This is John Deek speaking.
Everyone relax. This is Tofop. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson. Hello and thank you for watching.
You know what there is too much of, Will?
Hair on your upper lip. Are we talking about that first? Should we just get to the fact that you've got a mustache? What's going on?
I always have a mustache.
Well, you normally have like a mustache that's accompanied by some other facial hair.
Well,
whereas
there is some
at the
other
moment,
facial hair. It's
only a small amount though. You've got like a George Michael style 5 o'clock shadow going on for the rest of your face. And then you've got like a George Michael in the video clip for Outside style mustache that you're rocking on the top lip.
I'm sensing you don't like my mustache. What's going on?
Oh, I'm not saying I don't like it.
Well, you're suspicious.
No,
you don't trust
I'm suspicious of it. It does. I'm like, you're a cop. You're an undercover cop. It reminds me of that time that we were in a Byron Bay nightclub about 20 years ago and nobody would talk to us because they thought you were an undercover cop because they recognised your face from Blue Heelers and they were like, who's this narc? It's given me those vibes. I don't know why I'm suspicious of you, but I feel like I am. Yes, it's made me suspicious of, like if you had that mustache when you had that encounter with that woman who either did have a sister or pretended to have a sister either to throw you off. This mustache, I would have believed that she pretended to have a sister. I would have been like, okay, she's spotted you with that mustache. She's gone, I don't trust this guy. I'm not sure why, but I'm just getting a weird feeling from that bit of hair in the middle of his face and I'm going to make up a cover story.
Not even like an ironic, like hipster kind of, I don't get away with it in like an ironic hipster way. Well, it looks legit. Like I genuinely think I'm Clark Gable.
It definitely has that era about it. It's definitely got that old school, black and white, movie star kind of look about it.
Matinee idol.
Or you're an Australian cricketer touring the subcontinent.
I'm okay with both of those. It is interesting though, like as someone who does like to experiment with facial hair, it's only minor. The reason why you are having such a revulsion
I am mustache. Too. I can't take my eyes off it.
Because I'm telling you, like I've had this mustache. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit shaded and a bit more grass around here. But the only difference is it grows bushier, like more Lee Matthews. And I tapered it in with a styling,
I don't like it. Remington. It feels culturally inappropriate. It looks like you're trying to fashion a boomerang. That's what it looks like. It's very boomerang shaped. And I don't feel like as a white Australian man, you have the cultural right to wear a boomerang in the middle of your face.
It's funny, like this only happened in the last 24 hours that I shaved this. And both you and Gemma have had a similar reaction.
It's too round. It's too rounded off at the edge. It feels like safety bowling. That's what it is. I've gone 10-pin bowling and somebody's put the inflatable guards in the lanes. That's what your mustache reminds me of.
Too manicured is what you're saying. It's like it's not masculine, like I just let my mustache grow. No David Boone about this.
It looks intentional. It's got a very intentional look about it, as opposed to, I guess, I'm used to your facial hair looking
being
more
unpretentious.
Yeah, exactly. More like it's just grown on your face and you vaguely shaped it, whereas this one really looks like you've gone out on a limb to make a statement.
But if I'd established a persona that was a bit more like I'm a David Bowie, I'm a what do you call it? Like a
chameleon.
Not a chameleon, but someone who's kind of like a dandy. Like I'm a bit of a dandy, a modern day dandy. Okay. Like I'm into my clothes. Sometimes I wear a pocket watch. I'm on eBay and I'm buying like kind of vintage suits all the time. I listen to records on vinyl and stuff. Like that's my kind of thing. rather than the schlub, the sleeveless kind of schlub always in like exercise gear that I am. Do you think I get? Is it just the fact that like you would accept this being on, say, like I don't know, who's who's a stylish kind of hipster around about my age, like a musician or someone like that, like the lead singer of the Killers, right? Doesn't he have a mustache like this?
Brandon Flowers, is that what his name is?
Flowers, yep. Yeah,
so
let's go with that.
If Brandon Flowers was rocking that moustache, I'd be like, absolutely, 100%. That looks exactly like the lead singer of the Killers would wear that moustache. Like he's wearing some sort of.
If George Clooney grew a moustache,
yes,
yeah, he can get away with it.
Of course he can.
People with
living
class
in a
and
villa
style
on some sort of like lake in Italy, you can absolutely rock that moustache. But yes, I think it is incongruous to the rest of your presentation. I think that's what it is. It feels like you've not earned that mustache, like that you need to go out and buy some vinyl and get yourself a pocket watch before, like it feels like you've hipster cultural appropriated that mustache, I think.
Yeah. It feels like I'm mocking like hipster culture, because it's like, yeah, I'll grow the mustache and maybe give myself a bit of a quiff, but everything else is 100% slob.
Yeah, you're not living the lifestyle. You're a tourist. You're just visiting.
But hipsters must come home and throw on like, you know, tracky dacks and a comfortable T-shirt when they're done hipstering.
Well, maybe not though. Maybe they have some skinny tracky pants, you know, and then they have like some, you know, old band T-shirt that is like, you know, hipster commentary on modern life and the fact that relaxing at home. I mean, there might still be some hipster ironic take on homeware, right? Are you suggesting that you think that hipsters are just normal slobs like the rest of us at home, and
yes,
then they only go out
clothes.
into the world? You're like, better get dressed as a hipster.
It's
and the rest
uniform.
of the time they're just like normal like the rest of us.
Yeah, I think there's a certain a segment of like hipsters or like rockabillys or whatever who live the lifestyle 24/7, but fucking occasionally you just need to put on some Target tracksuit pants and like, you know, a $10 T-shirt.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's what it is. I just think it is exactly what you've said. It feels a bit too rounded, you know, and it feels a bit too like it's making it all about itself. Like normally when you have a mustache, it feels like it's part of a collaboration with the rest of your face. Whereas it feels like this mustache has gone solo.
Yeah,
like, you know,
the Justin Timberlake of my face.
Yeah, if your facial hair was a boy band, I liked your mustache as part of the boy band. But now that it's a solo artist and it's had a bit of a glow up, I just it doesn't fit in anymore.
Okay, so if the mustache is the JT, then which one's the Joey Fatone? The nose, right? That's the one that's like, geez, all right, we will forgive this for the rest of this.
No, I think that it's your ears because they're covered up by your headphones.
Does the ears count as face though?
They've made them hide. Are you saying the ears aren't part of your face?
I don't think so. Like if someone said, describe him, you would say dark eyebrows, you know, hazel eyes, round nose, mustache. I wouldn't say two small ears.
I would definitely add the ears as part of a facial description. Whenever you ever see,
only if they're
like
notably
a court sketch, for example, about somebody who's like, you know, when you have like a crime's been committed and somebody, you know, tells the sketch artist what the person looks like. They don't give them a potato head. They put like ears on them.
I don't think you would describe ears. Like I never take note, unless someone has like
what.
Prince
So you're
Charles
saying the sketch
ears.
artist out of the police station is just banging in whatever standard is that he normally puts there.
I reckon he's got his generic ears because
one of the things that would, if you were trying to describe me, one of the things that would be best to describe is that I have ears that join at the bottom rather than go up. Like that is a very identifiable feature that, like a fingerprint, that you'd be able to go, that is definitely that person.
I mean, you've told me about your ears and I'd forgotten. That's how little it means to me, or how much I notice what your ears do, or anyone's ears. Like if you did
where do you think the face finishes? Do you think the face finishes just before the ear, like at the sideburn? Do you consider the sideburn and the edge of the jaw to be your face? Anything
behind the mouth is no longer your face. Behind the jaw. That's all face.
I ask you this question.
Hannibal Lecter, when he cut off that dude's face, didn't make sure he cut around the ears.
I'm glad that you have gone to the world of movies because you've entered into evidence Hannibal Lecter as your character witness. I'm going to enter in the cast of the hit movie Face Off, When they took the face off in Face Off, they didn't just whack the front of the face on. Like Castor Troy, he had his Castor Troy's ears, or otherwise he would be very identifiable as going, they're not your ears. What's going on? There's something really different with your ears.
I don't think I would notice ears. Like if you swap faces with like, I don't know, like
take your headphones off.
That would be
take your headphone off for a second. Just like pull one out so I can see your ears at the moment. Right.
Yeah.
So your ears barely stick out. They're quite small. If I put your face, if we had a Tofop face-off situation,
toe face off.
For one of the live shows, we managed to get our hands on the face-off technology. And we
That would be awesome.
This will be great, right?
But we have to keep like the contrivance of face off that never works is like, oh, we make their bodies look the same as well.
Yeah.
For us, it's just the faces. So it's my face stretched over your giant 6'3" body, and it's your like loose skinned 6'3" face hanging over my 5'10" frame. So it's like my skin's
the
way
ears
too
are actually
tight.
the ears are pinned together at the back just to hold my face on.
You just tie your ears behind my skull.
I'm like, I'm Charlie. I'm really fit. Limp, 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 limp.
Shuffling onto stage. I reckon if you showed me, like, the people who are closest in my life, like you leave Iona out it because the size would be a giveaway. But like Gemma, you, people that I speak to all the time, if I had to do like a lineup of the ears, I think I would struggle with just say there was like 3 dudes and 3 girls that I had to pick off, like 3 male, 3 female.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I pay enough attention to ears to be able to.
Well, okay, but if I say we did outlines of faces instead of like just having the ear there, and you have to identify the people by.
So I can just
ears.
move the ear in on each face. I can bring across your face. Yeah, okay. Then that would probably.
It would help. You'd be like, that looks right. That fits, right? I think that you need.
If there's any, we have some cops who listen to this show. I wonder if they could put us in touch with like a courtroom artist or a sketch artist, not a courtroom artist. We've had that. But a sketch artist, and we can ask them, like, what are you really trying to get detail on? Eyes, jaw, nose, and then where do ears rank in that? Like, have you ever like, given up on a lead on a suspect because you couldn't get the ears right?
I bet that ears are important. I mean, particularly in the criminal world, you'd imagine there's a lot of distinctive ears. We're talking like, I mean,
if it's Dick Tracy and it's like Jughead, and
I'm
box
thinking
ears and
like, Chopper Reed, obviously most famously, cut off his ears. But like in that criminal world, like a lot of ex-boxers, people who've been in fights, been in scraps, you're talking about like cauliflower ears, you're talking about the idea that somebody might be missing part of their ear, but also piercings. Piercings are hugely identifiable, I would have thought. So if somebody's got like 3 earrings in their left ear and like there's an earring in the top, like, I mean, immediately to me, that is more identifiable than a set of generic eyes. Surely.
I'm just gonna Google like what do you call it? Police ID sketches. I'm gonna bring some up and see. This is sketches used by the police in the USSR to identify suspects based on their race. So it's kind of not the most racist stereotypes, but leaning into the racist stereotypes.
Pretty racist. Seeing the top.
No, but they're not exaggerating.
Russian, Ukrainian, Jew.
Gypsy.
Feels a little racist.
The gypsy looks like the dude from The Last of Us, that Pedro Pascal.
Oh yeah, it does actually. Very handsome gypsy. I've got to be honest with you.
All right, they've listed Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusian, Lithuanians, Georgians, etc. So people all from around the USSR. This is from the 60s, this sketch. And I would say that the ears play a significant part in the identity of all these people.
Yeah, they all have different ears, don't they?
Well, no one is mistaking me as coming from the USSR because none of these guys have small ears. They're all very healthy, endowed ears. Can you have well-endowed ears?
Yeah, I believe that you can have well-endowed ears, and you're right. They're big-eared people.
Yeah. All right, so I take that back. Obviously, ears play a huge part. I guess maybe it's because I never notice my ears when I look in the mirror. So, you know what I mean? I just assume that no one else pays any attention.
I think it's also because as we're doing this podcast, what happens on the screen is that I have a big picture of you, but there's a smaller picture of me, like, next to it. And it's probably the same with you. And you're wearing headphones that cover both your ears. So I think you've got a little bit of the toddler who puts their hand over their eyes and thinks they're invisible. I think because you can't see your ears right now, you don't think they play a major part in your face.
Well, it's only when people discover I've got small ears, it's always like, you do. Like I don't think I've ever had anyone, or maybe one or two people sort of just like pick it as themselves. Normally they're prompted by Gemma or someone trying to give me shit that I've got very small ears. So I just assume like if it was a more prominent feature, then people would be like, like I'd have more of a nickname about it. They'd call me Minty or something like that.
I mean, yeah, but I'm not even sure that like it looks like a minty, your head. It doesn't really look like a minty unless the minty has been incorrectly packed. Because with the minty, the twirly bits are at it'd be like on the top of your head and down the bottom of your chin if your head looked like a minty. Like this is like very much a minty that's been in the car and sort of melted into a different shape.
Well, what do you call? So if like Big Ears is like Jughead, you'd call someone like Jughead or something like that. That's the common nickname for someone like Four Eyes, Big Ears. So
and that's because it's a handle essentially. So what has a small handle? You're like teacup.
Teapot?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you need one of those ones that has the two handles, like when you're at a Chinese restaurant or something and you're sipping soup and stuff. What are they called? Bowlhead. Not the most imaginative slander. Well, it didn't start off a tradition, but it's quickly become one of our most beloved traditions on this show is to review a best of time travel movie list.
Oh, yeah, great.
A lot of people sent this in last week. This is from The Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
You know The Guardian, the one that passively aggressively asks you if you're going to start supporting them when you go visit them.
You know what I love about that is the fact that it passively aggressive asks, but at the same time it's like, yeah, but we're cool if you don't. Like we need to point out we're cool people and it's cool if you don't support us. We do want to just point out that you've read 165 articles in the last 2 days. But if you don't want to support us, that's still cool because we're still cool. But like heaps of other people are supporting us and look, we're keeping track of how much you're fucking reading on our site and you're not supporting us. Anyway, we're cool. You can keep reading it. It is absolutely fine. This is not saying that you can't read it, but also give us some fucking money. You're here all the time.
So these lists, they've in the past we've read them. They've ranged from the absolutely like deranged. Others are used as sort of platforms for comedy. This one I believe is sort of more in the comedic sort of realm. Like it's by a journalist called Stuart Heritage, who I believe is an English writer.
Okay.
I just had a quick scan through some of his he's a pop culture writer for The Guardian in the UK.
And this is a list, right? So this is technically a heritage list. Do you think he's got into this business of lists just because his last name is Heritage and he thought it was good branding?
It's like a bookman working at a library. So, previous headlines, A Mask of Unadorned Misery, How Ben Affleck Became the World's Biggest Meme, or Anti-Woke Nightmare, Why the Faulty Tales Remake is Truly a Nauseating Idea. So this is
You know what I love about Stuart Heritage's work? Is I have read both of those previous articles. I really I should start supporting The Guardian.
Yeah,
I haven't read this one, but I've definitely read those other two.
All right. Well, so give me what's the sense of is he writing a humorous kind of pop culture style?
It's pop culture with a tongue in cheek, but not necessarily comedy, like just more like, in that pop culture world and writes with the sensibility of that world.
Yeah. Okay. So he starts off as Adam Driver accidentally winds up 65 million years ago, facing not just dinosaurs but an asteroid. Is that really what that plot of that movie is about?
Well, from the trailer, it seems to be that's what the plot of that movie is about.
So he arrives on Earth the day an asteroid's coming to wipe out the dinosaurs.
Oh, not the day. I think that from the trailer, you get the impression that it's towards the end of the dinosaurs, right? So if there is an asteroid, then I guess that's they're saying that people think that it was an asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, and so
but we all know it was vaccines.
Yeah, exactly.
With multiple boosters, gave them autism and then killed them. Haven't you seen those TikTok videos of all those trembling dinosaurs?
Oh, mate.
I can't even reach my food. It's because you're a T-Rex. Your arms aren't long enough. It's nothing to do with the vaccine. The vaccine's actually protected you.
I was looking at these cave drawings by Ugg Rogan and just got a lot of interesting ideas, you know? So he arrives, he's from future.
Jamie, chisel that shit.
It is either a person from another universe who, space traveler, or it is a human being, who is so advanced technologically that, human beings are not what we imagine human beings are, and he can travel through time. It's got that vibe from the trailer, which I've watched a couple of times, of a bit Planet of the Apes-y, where, hey, I think I'm on a different planet, but it turns out I've gone back, 65 million years and I've actually landed on Earth, and it's the time of the dinosaurs. So he's there. There's some young girl in it as well. And they're like running from dinosaurs and having to fight dinosaurs. And then I guess, the asteroid might be part of that plot line. I've got to be honest with you, for something that looks like one of the dumbest ideas of all time, every time I've watched a trailer for it, I've thought, I'm definitely going to watch that movie. Like, it actually looks much more interesting to me than any of the Jurassic Park films. Like, if I was going to watch something with dinosaurs, this feels more like my jam.
Well, Iona is way into dinosaurs, like most little kids. Volcanoes especially, actually. We bought, one of those science project, you build your own volcano and you fill it with baking soda. We did that. Managed to kill half my lawn. Turns out vinegar and baking soda on your lawn will kill the grass right down to the roots. But I've been thinking about, because there is this thing about dinosaurs where kids love them, but, they're virtually monsters, there's sort of this fine line. So you want to kind of give them enough to kind of satiate, but not give them nightmares. So I've been she wants to watch videos on dinosaurs, and it's always like the more realistic, the special effects are when they're doing those docos or whatever about dinosaurs, the more terrifying they are. It's almost like it's better to watch the really dinky, 15-year-old CGI dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, no, you want them to be rounded off and purple.
Like my mustache.
Yeah, no sharp edges, either on your face or in your dinosaur documentaries.
Okay, so let's get into Stuart's list. 20 films. We're going to try and whip through these. Well, no, we're not. We're going to time them perfectly to get to 1 hour.
Yeah,
so
we've got about 38 minutes of us whipping through these.
Okay, so the first one, do you want to take a punt? I'll give you a clue. Action time travel.
Action time travel, Looper.
No, more 90s. In fact, the last line
Terminator.
of his paragraph is, it's the most 90s film ever made. So
okay.
Extrapolate from that. So 90s. I would say this would fall more into B category. I mean, mainstream, big star at the time, mainstream studio release, but definitely B elements. In fact, may have inspired a certain Tofop character that has been spun off.
Okay. So Quantum Cop, and it's like a B movie time travel movie. I mean, my clue is you've used the word. There's 2 words in the name of the movie, and you've used both of them in the last. Time Cop.
Time Cop. Perfect. Regardless of what anyone says, I believe in my heart that Time Cop was greenlit because someone showed a studio executive a picture of Jean-Claude Van Damme and said the word Time Cop out loud, at which point they had to throw a script together as quickly as possible. Nothing about Time Cop makes sense. It's the most 90s film ever made. I've seen this a long time ago. I can barely remember it, but I think it's like Ron Silver plays a bad guy who goes back in time to kill Lincoln again or earlier or something like that. Maybe just shoot some slugs in or once he's already dead. Doesn't make any sense. And Jean-Claude Van Damme is Time Cop, and he's got to chase him through time and does the splits in his apartment when someone tries to shoot him. He jumps up onto his kitchen bench and does the splits.
I feel like I've seen that image, but I'm not sure that I've ever actually seen the movie Time Cop.
I mean, maybe I haven't seen Time Cop either, but I feel like I have. Maybe it's just having written 5 issues of Quantum Cop.
I've got to be honest with you, after you describing that, I feel like I've seen Time Cop. I feel like I could just make up the rest in my head, but I'm not sure I've actually ever watched it.
Okay. Next film, number 19. I wouldn't want to get this one back to front when I'm reading the description.
When you're reading the description. So you don't want to get it back to front because you're reading the description.
I wouldn't read his review, start at the end and then go back to the start.
Memento?
No, but the other one. The other one is good.
Oh, Tenet.
Okay. He says, I had to be careful here because Tenet might not be a time travel movie. Certainly time passes in it and some of the people are going backwards in time. That's a good point. Does that count as time travel?
I mean, they travel backwards in time. Like, so isn't that time travel in the very, I mean, I know.
Yeah, I mean, in the very basic.
Yeah.
I guess you're defying, in terms of the sci-fi, you are defying physics by being able to move backwards.
You can move backwards and forwards in time at the same time, right? And like for us, moving forwards in time, we don't consider time travel, although technically I guess it is. You know, if you move backwards at the same time, we consider time travel to be you've got to jump, I guess, don't we?
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, look, I widen the definition because I think the sci-fi element of moving backwards through time, because it's in its nature impossible, that to me qualifies it as a time travel film. Like, I don't think you can say Boyhood is a time travel film, even though we see a boy jump through time, like forwards, because that is the natural flow of time, at least the way we perceive it. But if a character can actively move backwards, then I think that counts as time travel.
And yet Boyhood technically absolutely is a time travel movie in the sense that, yes, it was filmed in real time, but we don't see the entire filming in real time. We actually get to see people jump through time, travel through time, like get older and experience different eras.
In a short space of time, yeah.
But I do think that Tenet, they're fucking with time and they're traveling. So that's enough.
Okay. A film that I have not heard of, therefore you have not heard of, from 1985.
Give me a clue of the name and see if I can guess it.
Okay. Ugg Rogan's, if
okay, yeah, all right, good.
Could potentially be Ugg Rogan's partner.
Something woman, something girl, something wife.
Correct, girl.
Ugg Rogan, cave girl.
Cave girl. Fuck, you're good at this shit.
No.
What game show can we put you on where you just guess
where you have to come
clues?
in? You come in and give me weird, obscure clues, and I see if I can work it out based on that.
Do you think that's a game show we could take to like a streaming service? It's just like there's no contestants. Every week it's just me and you, and I give you the most terrible clues, and you have to guess.
And I see if I can work it out. That's the show. Yeah. Also, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Time Cop. We've got two pictures.
Cave Girl, a finally film that uses time travel for the correct reason, to allow a horny 1980s school student to go back to prehistory so he can convince a smoking hot bikini-wearing cave girl to have it off with him.
Oh.
You will note I've ranked this film above Tenet.
Oh,
That's pretty funny. Can you imagine anything? That would be gross. Let's go back to a time before soap, before hygiene, you know, where people are fighting tooth and nail just to survive and have sex with someone. But
also terrible. We've advanced so much intellectually in that time that to me that's like having
bestiality.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having sex with like a person who's not like capable of like consenting to that situation. Like that's gross. Yeah, that feels weird. Let's go back and use my modern wiles that aren't working like in the society that I'm in. But if I go back to caveman times, I'll be charming enough to be able to groom a cave girl.
It's so gross. Just a bunch of incels inventing time travel so they can go back through time with matches and wheels and shit like that.
I feel like that's actually a more interesting story. A bunch of incels come up with time travel so they can go back to the time that they actually want to be in. It's a bit Don't Worry Baby or whatever it's called. But
that's a great idea. But they go back, but then they just get absolutely savaged by these kind of like survivalist cave women who are just fucking every day is about survival. They'll beat your ass. They don't fuck off with your matches and your wheel and your shiny beads. They'll fucking rip your throat out. That's a great premise for a film.
A whole bunch of incels invent time travel to go back to a time where they think they'll dominate and then get their throats ripped out by cave women.
Yeah, we called it Incel on Earth. All right, number 17. Mm-hmm. Well, he's a British writer. Will, this is probably one of Britain's pop culture.
Writer?
who wrote this article, this next film is probably one of the most famous British pop culture icons in modern cinematic history.
Mr. Bean. Does Mr. Bean time travel at some stage in his
I know
car?
there's a Mr. Bean time travel film,
Okay.
although it would be hilarious.
I mean,
I could just see him
imagine him
fumbling
not coping
around
in other times. You know what I mean?
his shirt getting caught in his fly when he's meeting Adolf Hitler or something.
Actually, again, that's not a bad pitch. I reckon we could pitch a Mr. Bean time travel movie.
Where he just goes around and slapsticks with dictators from history.
Okay. Is it, are we talking, you say a British icon, James Bond? There's never been time travel in James Bond.
What's the comedy James Bond?
The comedy? Oh, so this is a comedy?
Probably the most annoying.
Austin Powers, of course. Yeah,
the most annoying catchphrase of the late 90s. Okay, he says, weird to think that Austin Powers was originally a fish-out-of-water comedy in which the promiscuous titular character had to navigate the then uptight world of the 1990s. That all fell apart for the sequel, where Powers was sent back to the 60s to shout out his catchphrase at people who actually appreciated them. That makes it a time travel movie, right? Yeah. I mean, he moved once through time, or like he moved back and then he comes back to the present, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, right?
Well, both ways, right? Is it the original one? He's like,
he gets frozen in time.
So that's still
Is Demolition Man time travel?
I mean, I think if you're frozen in time and then you wake up in nobody says how you have to travel through time. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're walking into
Boyhood is a time travel film. He just fucking gets older. No one says how you have to travel.
Yeah, but the difference would be that in Boyhood he didn't miss anything. Like even though we don't see it, it's not like there was a period of time where there was time skipped and then he woke up in a different time. Whereas in Austin Powers,
so it's like basically being in your 20s at a party where like it's 4 a.m. and you just wake up and suddenly it's fucking 6 p.m. on Sunday night.
You're just like, I don't really know what happened, but I've time traveled to Sunday night.
I somehow got on my couch at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night.
Well, I think the implication though also with Austin Powers is that he hasn't aged in that time. So he's traveled through time, but he hasn't personally aged in that same, because we all travel through time in the sense that we get older. And yes, in the Boyhood sense, we are traveling through time. But what we're talking about here is if someone is frozen and then wakes up in another time, I consider that to be time travel for them at the very least. That's just, that's economy class time travel. That's not your fancy up the front, walk into a blue police box and turn up in another place.
In a rocket and coming back in time as
but it's still time travel.
The same age. Yeah, okay. I'll allow it. Okay, the butterfly effect.
Okay.
God, this film. In summary, Ashton Kutcher plays a man who experiences blackouts, only to learn some years later that he can travel back in time and inhabit his younger self's mind during the blackouts. But in doing so, he unleashes a world of unintended consequences. He becomes a murderer and loses limbs. Seek out the director's cut if you can, because it ends with Kutcher's character deliberately strangling himself in the womb with his umbilical cord. No, really. Yeah, I have vague memories of this movie. I think I liked it, but not enough for it to rank even in my top 20. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe I wouldn't be able to think of 20 times. But I wouldn't immediately go to Butterfly Effect.
I don't think I've ever seen it. But based on that premise, I quite like that premise. That seems like quite interesting.
I remember it being good and clever. You hate Ashton Kutcher though, right? Do you still hate Ashton Kutcher?
I don't love him. And I like the idea of watching a director's cut where a baby intentionally murders itself in the womb, though. I feel like I can't believe that Hollywood didn't think that was something that should make the theatrical cut.
If that happens in a state in America where they've just outlawed abortion, like if you killed yourself as a baby, can they go back in time and arrest your fetus? You was a fetus?
Well,
they're like, it's a mixture of Minority Report and Butterfly.
If life begins at conception, then technically, as in that's what these people believe, that life begins at conception. Therefore, the fetus is responsible for the murder of the fetus. So, it's a movie about a time cop who goes back to arrest the fetus preemptively before it can murder itself in utero.
I mean, it's weird. It's a weird kind of concept too, because the idea of him projecting his current present day consciousness into versions of himself from the past. So he's his current adult intelligence and consciousness in a fetus's body, right? So, I mean, that's weird. Like, just think about that for a second. I mean, it's completely dark.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think there'd be a period of adjustment to like, shit, I'm not breathing. How am I getting oxygen? And then would a fetus even have the strength to grab the umbilical cord? Like, it takes ages for like their muscles to kind of develop any kind
I'd
of resistance
imagine
or strength.
if you had to in that scenario. Firstly, like, I'm not saying that he immediately arrived there and then just immediately strangled
You reckon he
himself.
worked out for a few weeks? He got there and just started doing curls.
I'm going to have to get a little bit more nutrition. I got to be honest with you. I got to do some workouts. Mum's like, he's really kicking down there. He's working out, trying to get his strength together to hang himself in utero. Like, it's pretty dark.
It'd be great to look at the
horrible.
ultrasound and you just see a fetus doing push-ups at the bottom of the womb.
Just like it's basically like in The Dark Knight Rises. Just down there, just trying to strengthen it.
Okie dokie. This is a film that's fairly recent, came out only a couple of years ago, starring Chris Pratt. I haven't seen it. You may have.
Chris Pratt. Guardians of the Galaxy.
No. It's got a name like, I don't know, maybe it's based on like young adult fiction, but it has a title that sounds like young adult fiction.
Oh, yes.
Think like Tomorrow When the War Begins.
Yeah, it's got tomorrow in the title, hasn't it? I remember it's something tomorrow, the tomorrow.
The tomorrow.
The tomorrow, today, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Julian,
conflict,
tomorrow.
Will?
War.
The Tomorrow War.
The Tomorrow War. Yeah, I do remember that coming out. I don't think I saw it, but I do remember it coming out.
Okay, I'm keen to hear what the plot is for this because I saw the trailers and it did not grab me at all. Wherein Chris Pratt is drafted into a war that takes place 26 years later because the invading aliens have already killed all the soldiers who were alive at the time.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, it's a great premise for a film. We all pay the price for the actions of other generations. All right, if that's the metaphor, right. Okay.
Yeah, it is. You know what? I did watch this.
That's a metaphor.
It's such a
bad guy's a metaphor.
It is one of those things that it looks weird. This film is my memory because the premise,
as weird as my mustache.
It does. It's got a bit of that about it. It's got a bit of that, like when sometimes a film comes out on streaming and you're like, this almost looks like a real movie, but there's just something about the way they shot it or made it or the gloss of it or it was trying to deal with a concept that was bigger than the glossy way that they actually shot the movie and made the movie. Because I remember watching it and thinking, oh yeah, this is kind of an interesting idea and an interesting premise, but there was just something about it that never quite worked for me.
He says it's let down by a truly confusing ending. Admit it, you forgot this film even existed. Yes, that's clearly. You all forgot to even watch it, even though it cost $200 million to make and only came out 18 months ago. Yeah. Wow.
You could tell that they'd spent a lot of money on it. There was a lot of unnecessary battle scenes that didn't actually add to the movie being good or bad.
This is a film that I think we've discussed in a previous list, The Time Travelers from 1964. It's a movie made on the cheap with genuinely terrible effects. The Time Travelers is about a group of scientists who travel to the future, fight some mutants, and then return. What sets it apart, though, is its crazed ending. The film ends with the scientists venturing into the distant future, whereupon the film plays through again faster and faster until it cuts away to a still of the galaxy. Are they trapped in a loop? Is free will an illusion? Did the producers run out of money? We may never know. Anything to say on that?
Well, we are probably trapped in a loop and free will probably is an illusion. So I guess they're good concepts to be playing with. But again, I've never seen it. I can't comment.
No comment from me either. There's another film you may have seen that I have not. Ryan Reynolds, another kind of direct-to-streaming
recent
film. Yeah, last year.
The Adam something.
That's it. The Adam Spencer.
The Adam Spencer. The Adam Project. I did say it's better than you would think it would be.
Okay. In which a young boy's life is turned upside down when he's visited by an older version of himself from the future. Okay, that's right. I have seen the trailer. The good news, he grows up to be a fighter pilot. The bad news, he also grows up to have all the cadences and surface level snarkery patter of Ryan Reynolds.
Which is a very Ryan Reynolds-esque thing to say. You've really slammed Ryan Reynolds with a Ryan Reynolds-esque slam.
It's funny, isn't it? He divides a lot of people. Like, I get it, but it's like, he is what he is, man. Like, he's never marketed himself as anyone other than he is. Like, he's that snarky kind of smart-assy, good-looking dude who happens to run an advertising agency. Did you know that?
An advertising agency, like a gin or tequila
Gin
business.
company.
He owns a football club. Like
Him and The Rock doing those like Red Notice movies or whatever. Like, do you reckon they fucking shared some intel? Like, they are basically on the same train, which is like, how do I maximize this profile?
They're superstar brand business people. Like Ryan Reynolds, of course, like Ryan Reynolds realized that there is a Ryan Reynolds brand and he never goes too far away from what that Ryan Reynolds brand is.
Yeah.
And why would he? Because
he's so good at it.
He was remember he was like Van Wilder party liaison or whatever the fuck.
2 pizzas and a girl and a party place.
That was actually quite good, that show. Two guys, a girl and a pizza place. The girl from it. Yeah, anyway, I liked that show quite a lot. It was better than people thought. And at the time he was like the poor man's Matthew Perry. Like,
yes, that's right.
He was like that same sort of, and that same sort of like snarky, a bit cynical,
sarcastic.
Like good looking, but not like perfectly good looking. And then Ryan Reynolds managed to turn around like that part of his career, the Green Lantern part of his career, like into now he is one of the most successful entertainers in the entire world. Like,
yeah, you could see him, he was on that track in Hollywood that they did with Jai Courtney, Sam Worthington, where it's like, we're going to give you lots of shots. Just tell us what vehicle's going to work for you. And he did Green Lantern and R.I.P.D. and he kept like just fucking being this film that sucked. And then just happened to have this Deadpool thing, which suited him like a glove. And that's what everyone's kind of looking for these days, isn't it? Just that franchise that's going to fucking get you on the map and then trigger all these other kind of deals and opportunities.
But also he just seems to be one of those people who's turned like all these businesses are fun, it seems. Like it doesn't feel like he's doing anything because, hey, this is like he hasn't opened like a franchise of, Burger Kings or whatever because like some, financial investor told him that would be like a good thing to put his money into.
It doesn't seem cynical like other. I mean, I'm sure he has some cynical investments.
Oh, I'm sure there is as well. But the idea is like, I like drinking like tequila or whatever. I'm going to have a tequila company. Like I think ads are crap. I'm going to make like good advertising and use all my mates in it. Like I'd like to own a football team. I'm going to buy a football team with my mate and make a TV show about it. Like it all feels like fun stuff. He's one of those people who's managed to monetize like having a fun life and has a incredibly beautiful wife and seems really happy. Like, I mean, I'm sure there must be.
Are you on the payroll of fucking Ryan Reynolds? This has been almost 5 minutes now of you just boosting Ryan Reynolds.
I mean,
is this part of the advertising? Am I in an ad? Am I in an ad for a Ryan Reynolds?
Today's episode of Tofop proudly brought to you by Ryan Reynolds. In fact, we've had to bury this plug in the middle of this list. Just we'll bugger on about a few other movies, but let's really lean into the Ryan Reynolds stuff.
Focus in on the Ryan Reynolds.
No, because I think that it's a great example of someone who isn't the funniest guy in the world, isn't the most handsome guy in the world, isn't the most talented guy in the world, but has a great awareness of like, how much talent he has in each of those areas. And he's managed to just like, I'm not even a big fan of anything in particular that he does. I like the Daredevil films, but it's not like, Deadpool films, but it's not like I'm going out of my way to go, oh, great, the new Ryan Reynolds film. Like I hated the one with The Rock. I thought it was like unwatchable. The Adam Project though, actually it's better than you would think it would be.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with him. Gemma has one of those things. It's his face. She thinks his eyes are too close together.
He's got a slightly weird face.
His eyes a bit close together. But even she has sort of come around to him. And it's like kind of like you. It's more he's the sum of his parts as opposed to any one thing. He knew his limitations, but he knew what people liked. And now he's living a great life. Here's to you, Ryan Reynolds. I'm on the payroll too, apparently.
I mean, his face looks like it was generated by AI. Like if you said chatbot GPT come up with a movie star, it would come up with something that you like. His face has a little of its own uncanny valley. And despite that, he's still managed to be very successful.
Okay, this next film is a film that I talked up, I think, in the last list or one of the lists that we've done. And I said
comedy
I thought it was
or drama?
Comedy.
Hot Tub or Time Machine.
Yes. I thought it was underrated and you said it was adequately rated. Yeah. Now, this is interesting because I actually saw it was on like one of my streaming services about 2 weeks ago. And so I rewatched it and I was really excited to rewatch it because I'm like, I love this film. Like, it's so funny. It has not aged well. I was actually quite surprised by how much of it was not as funny as I mean, I watched it a lot of times when it first came out, but it's dated really, really badly. Like so much of kind of like the homophobic humor and stuff is just like, oh boy, like it's kind of almost like some of those early Judd Apatow, like how, you're gay kind of stuff. It's like, oh, okay, boy, geez, times have changed quickly, haven't they?
Quickly,
really
and those things really don't age well, do they? There's a whole bunch of things that you're like, oh, I'm enjoying this. You called him a what now?
Yeah, exactly. But I still do. My favorite scene is John Cusack taking magic mushrooms and writing breakup poetry. It's like a 45-year-old man. Still a great scene. He's ranked at number 12. Okay. He says it's so seminal that it was name-checked in the Avengers Endgame, a flat-out comedy that primarily exists to allow a bunch of middle-aged men to act like teenagers. Hot Tub Time Machine is a film about an enchanted jacuzzi that sends people back to the 1980s, possibly a bit too baudy for its own good. I think that is the most British.
That's his way of saying what you've just said.
There's a hint of a message about the unreliability of nostalgia here.
Okay.
Did we talk about this? It was something I wanted to talk to you about, but I can't remember. If you had to sort of go back in time, to say you could own, it was a one-way ticket and you went back to 6 months before COVID first outbreak, so middle of 2019, do you think you would do or could affect society in any way that would have changed the outcome? Or was that pandemic just impossible to derail? Could you have protected yourself any better? Could you have done anything to make society safer?
I mean, I definitely could have protected myself better. There's no doubt about that. But
do you think though? Do you think like, as in protect yourself better? How? Like you'd still have to wait for a vaccine to be developed.
I know, but I could have stocked up on masks. I could have put some money away.
Shares in a mask.
Exactly. I definitely could have put some money away. Like, I could have planned a little bit better for, where I would have been and how I was going to pay for things, all those sort of things. But could you get the word out that's the more interesting question. Like if I had that information, like, somebody said to me, there's going to be this global pandemic. It's happening in 6 months from now. It's going to fuck up everything for a couple of years. If I started just saying that, like if I came on the podcast and said, look, guys, you've just got to believe me. This is what's happening.
After 12 years of bullshit, now you've got to believe me.
Right. So I think that I probably just would have lost. I'd be one of those people, essentially, I guess, who has like a YouTube channel or something where I'd be that everyone would just be like, I don't know what's happened to Will Anderson, but all he does is rave about this disease that's coming in 6 months from now. So I guess in 6 months from then, when the disease actually struck, I would either be one of those people who rode the wave of, oh, he knew this beforehand. Maybe I can give information that would help from then on. Like, I don't think you'd be able to get any information out previous. People just wouldn't believe you. But if it started to happen, if you said there's going to be these things that, there's going to be a disease that you're going to be hearing about out of China, it's going to spread all over the world, this is how it's all going to play out, then I think after a while when your predictions started to come true, maybe you would build some credibility. Like, but I think that there'd be a period of time.
But how would you, would you be doing it on this? Because basically there's no issue with you being able to predict the outcomes, but it's getting your predictions to a level of influence of people like, hey, there's this dude in Australia who's correctly predicted the first 3 months or the first month of this outbreak. So are you doing it on not this podcast, Philosophy gets better numbers. Would you have to dust off Philosophy and get that cranking again?
No, I think.
Are you stopping Gruen transfer, or are you getting your teams to request like an interview on the 7:30 report?
Well, I imagine that at this point I've been sacked from all my major jobs because everybody thinks that I'm an absolute madman who's like spouting nonsense about this disease that's coming in 6 months. Then when I'm starting to get these things right, obviously the job offers come back. Everybody like wants to talk to the person who seems to know what's going on. But then I think there's the backlash. Like, how do I know this information? Like, what am I in on this? Am I part of this? Am I part of the grand conspiracy? I think there's got to be that narrative that starts to happen if you are too accurately predicting what is happening.
100%. Imagine what kind of tizzy like Sky News After Dark would be in now, when Rebel News, that fucking Chardonnay sipping limousine liberal Will Anderson is calling for fucking lockdowns and mask wearing. Like, this is before anything's ever, like, you are a commie. Like, that is it. That is fucking, we knew it.
He wants to.
We always knew.
He wants to lock us all up. He wants us to have equal amounts of things. This is communism taking over.
People say that backed by data and evidence, and they get called fucking communists. Imagine how you would have been labelled.
Yes,
you'd be the Pete Evans. You'd be the inverse Pete Evans.
Well, I think that that's exactly what you would be early on. It's only when some of these things start to come true that it gives you any credibility. But I think that for that period of 6 months, so imagine I've just been transported back in time. So I know this. I've lived it. I know how it all sort of goes down. I would try to help, but how would you help? Like, how would you help? Like, I mean, I do have access to media, and I do think that I could get the word out, but I think that mostly it would be dismissed as, because if 6 months before COVID, somebody told you that, oh, by the way, look, I know 2019's been a bit of a challenging year, but, enjoy what you're doing at the moment, because like come the end of this year, you're going to be like, the entire world's going to be locked down for 2 years. You would think that it would sound like what conspiracy theory people say now.
Well, I've got a friend who is an epidemiologist and was part of the Victorian response team. So, I'm clearly compromised and a communist as well. All hail Dictator Dan, second only to Ryan Reynolds in my estimation. And I was sort of saying to him, we caught up a couple of months ago, and I was like, was this entirely unexpected? And he said, well, no, you've SARS and, we've seen other pandemics play out to various degrees. So he said, the scale of it and how new it was and stuff, that was something that was was something that to stay on top of. But he said, it was relatively people were prepared. Like there was a sort of system in place, how quickly they came up with the vaccines, all that kind of stuff.
Are you saying it was some sort of plandemic? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But if you could go to someone like him and somehow and use that kind of knowledge that, well, look, is it entirely unlikely? Maybe you could do your own research.
I guess I guess that accessing the scientific community would be my first step.
Because we always listen to the scientists, Will. That's the one thing I know about us.
I'm not saying the scientists would necessarily get it out there, but I need something to back up because no one's going to listen to me if I'm just saying these things. You need to be able to go, like you said, to your friend who's an epidemiologist. So I guess I'm calling Adam Spencer and saying, what scientists do you know? And then I'm calling Dr. Carl and I'm like, put me in touch with some people because I have this information. I need some scientific data that will make this sound more credible when I present this to people. And therefore it's not just because how am I justifying it, do you think? Am I saying that I have traveled back in time, or am I keeping that to myself? So that
I think
because that dismisses my credibility.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there is someone, in order to win over like an Adam or a Dr. Carl or whoever, you have to start predicting sporting outcomes or whatever, just to kind of prove to get them on side. Because they would be like, why are you even thinking about this? What do you even know about epidemiology? Wuhan, where's that? Like you would just for expediency's sake, you'd say, hey, Richmond win this grand final by blah, 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 blah points. And then it happens. Then you start going, why the fuck am I trying to save the world? Right. I could be buying. I could have placed a bet and I was going to build a bunker in New Zealand.
So I guess what you're the two questions you asked was, do I think I could do anything for the world versus do I think I could do anything for myself? Absolutely, you could do stuff for yourself. Like you said, you could use your knowledge of the future to get an incredible amount of money in a short amount of time and go and protect yourself and live in a bunker in New Zealand. Of course, you could do that. But the broader question is, could you warn the world about what is coming? And I think that at the moment, if you look at climate change, the fact that there are scientists, the IPCC, the international scientists all coming together to give us this warning about impending doom that they have scientific evidence behind, and the way that as a planet we are completely fucking ignoring them and just getting on with things means that probably Ando, the comedy commando, claiming that he's travelled from the future would not be convincing either.
All that video that's been coming out of people in LA, like the snowstorms, and it's snowing in Pasadena and all that kind of stuff. It just makes me think of that scene in Titanic, where they've just after they've hit the iceberg and everyone's kind of still unsure about what's going on. And there's just a shot from the bird's nest to the deck of the Titanic and you see a bunch of passengers like laughing and kicking around a block of ice. Oh, isn't this fun? It's like, to me, that just perfectly encapsulates where we are right now. It's like, oh, it's snowing in Pasadena. It's 25 degrees in London in the middle of October. This is great.
So funny, isn't it, guys? How the weather is nothing like how it should be. This is really fun. I'm sure this is not a portent of anything terrible that's coming in the future. So, yeah, I think that it would be hard for me to convince anyone.
All right. Well, I think we should just put a pin in this and save the second half of this list. The last 11 films for next episode.
Sounds good.
Because I know we're on a bit of a schedule.
Yes.
But you're doing shows at the moment. This will be out in 2 weeks' time. So
I will be
March.
done in Adelaide by the time that people hear this. So thank you to everybody who came out and helped me work out what the new show is in Adelaide. So by the time people hear this, I reckon you still might be able to get tickets to the Hobart show. Haven't been to Hobart for a very long time. There might be a couple of tickets left by the time you hear this. I am also going to Canberra, then the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. 2 weeks only, 12 shows. So get in quick if you want to come. And that's almost about half sold out already. So if you want to come and see me in Melbourne, I would say don't wait until I get down there. Get a ticket beforehand. And then Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Townsville, I think, and hopefully some more dates will be added as well. But I think they are all the ones that are currently on sale. I have a book. It is called I Am Not Fine, Thanks. If you would like a signed copy, they're mostly available at the shows. I tend to sign some copies and they're available for purchase at the shows as well if you want to check those out.
And, of course, go to tofop.com to check out our other great podcast, Two Guys, One Cup Summer Series. My Club is happening at the moment, chatting to lots of famous Aussies about the teams they support. We had Rowan Connolly, firebrand, left-leaning, Dan-loving firebrand Rowan Connolly talking about the Bombers a couple of weeks ago. Scott Major talking about his beloved Bulldogs. And then next week, Josh McConville talking about the Suns. Yes, I found a Sun supporter in the wild. If you want to support the show, you can. Patreon.com /Tofop. We put up ad-free versions of the show. We also put up full videos and quantum copies coming. Anyone who follows me on social media would see that I've posted 2 panels that James Fosdyke sent me. Trust me, there is a splash page on this, which is his masterpiece. You've never seen so many dicks in one panel in your life. And also, don't forget to check out highlights on YouTube. We're also on Instagram and Twitter at Tofop. I think we're about to start a TikTok account too. Don't worry, Will. We don't have to do any dances. We're just going to put those short highlight videos on TikTok because they're perfectly designed for that kind of audience. So I think if you want to find us there, we are Tofop on TikTok. I believe we should have an account by the time this episode comes out. But for now, I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson.
How long? Not long. Everyone relax. Fucking stupid.
Listener.